Cam. Talk about football.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to episode 17 of the We Like Football podcast. I'm Hayden. That's Andy. The Pro Bowl happened yesterday, so we're going to spend the next hour talking about that and that alone. Totally kidding. Please don't turn us off just yet. We'll actually talk about Tom Brady and how he heard that Andy said that he was going to retire and responded with a swift go to hell. We'll also talk about other happenings around the league, like name changes and lawsuits. And then finally, we'll talk about the Super Bowl, which is actually going to happen next week. I had to fact check that. I had to look it up twice, made sure it is actually happening next week, not next year. Excited to jump into everything football in this episode. Andy, sup?
Oh my God, I hate your guts so much. I'm so ill-prepared to talk about the Pro Bowl. Are you freaking kidding me? The AFC won 41 to 30. No, of course not.
Okay.
As we were discussing, I rewatched Breaking Bad. Well, began my rewatch of Breaking Bad for the unprecedented fifth time, 2 times less than Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. We're getting there. Anyways, the AFC won the Pro Bowl 41 to 35. It was the 5th consecutive victory for the AFC. Go Steelers. I don't know. TJ Watt had a strip sack and Deontay Johnson caught a 2-point conversion. That is the entirety of my Pro Bowl knowledge. I hope you don't want any more than that. I hope you don't have any more than that. If you do, I'm leaving.
That was exponentially more than I had. I know that Stephon Diggs pointed at his brother and Alvin Kamara got arrested afterwards, but yeah, it was like on at my house, but it was just kind of background noise. I certainly did not tune in to the Pro Bowl.
No, unless you're there, which I did get to attend a Pro Bowl back in 2008 after the Steelers won the Super Bowl. Thanks, Mom. That was pretty cool, being surrounded by the biggest names in the NFL everywhere you turn. That's pretty neat. I'm sure it's a good time for the players, but in terms of I don't. In terms of watching the Pro Bowl, I cannot imagine why you would. So we're not going to dwell on it any longer. You asked me what's up. Not much. I'm excited to talk about football. I guess I want to shout out that guy that was blasting Pat Benatar at the car wash today. He was on one. So props to you, dude, if you're watching. I want to shout out The Rock for producing these skimpy tank tops and forcing me to trudge my way through a miserable workout today. It's almost beach season. We got to stay ready if we're going to be bearing our tits like Antonio Brown in MetLife. Anyways, I'm babbling to start. We're not going to get under our hour goal at this rate unless we jump right in. So you mentioned Tom Brady did done retire. What do you got?
Oh, I have shout outs too. And you didn't flex. This is the first time I think in 17 episodes. Thank you, God, for the people.
For the people.
For the people. I have a shout out. It's actually a doctor, Dr. Steve Brand. Saw that he's been liking some of our stuff on the book. Appreciate you, Dr. Steve Brand. I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that going to the dentist sucks, right? But you can go to this guy and he can make it suck. Maybe just a little bit less. Also, shout out to Matthew Stafford. Today is Matthew Stafford's 34th birthday. So happy birthday to Matthew Stafford. I'm sure he listens to this, especially during Super Bowl week. So happy birthday to you, Matthew Stafford. And then shout out to you, not you, that Andy, you get nothing and you like it. Shout out to you, the listener. We appreciate you listening, and we appreciate you coming here to hear us babble about football. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't bother playing radio every week and putting it on the internet. Shout out to you. If you do like us, please tell somebody about it, share it, subscribe, all that other good podcast speak. It does wonders for the algorithm that I totally don't understand, but tell a friend. Anywho, yeah, Tom Brady.
Yeah, Tom Brady did done retire, as we mentioned, after 22 years and then much consternation in the final days. Of course, there was opinions were split as to whether or not his goatness finally would hang them up, and he, in fact, did so. Surprisingly to me, I didn't think Tom Brady would ever bear going out with a loss, but I guess after 22 long and fruitful years for him and miserable years for the rest of the viewing public, Tom Brady has finally done enough. He stamped his name all over the NFL record books. Everybody knows this, but just it does bear repeating after what was such a remarkable career. Tom Brady retires with 84,520 passing yards. That's over 4,000 more than Drew Brees, who's number 2 on that category. 624 passing touchdowns, 53 more than, again, number 2, Drew Brees. He has 243 regular season victories, which is 57 more than number 2, which is a tie between Brett Favre and Peyton Manning. Tom Brady has 35 playoff wins, which is 19 more than number 2, Joe Montana. Tom Brady won more than double the playoff games of his next closest competitor. Holy fucking. Anyway, 15-time Pro Bowler, 7-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time NFL MVP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You don't need any more reminding, but in case there's anyone who wants to dispute it, Tom Brady is the unquestioned GOAT, the greatest team sport athlete of all time, the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest winner of all time. Whatever superlative you want to attach to him, it is not enough to express what a remarkable career we just watched draw to a close.
Yeah, and we won't ever see it again, probably not in this lifetime. Just absolutely absurd. Like 57 more regular season victories than Brett Favre. Like the NFL had 16 regular season games. That's freaking ridiculous. The playoffs as well. If you're like most people, you've seen Tom Brady sort of kick your team's dick in. So that's kind of where we're headed with this one. We're going to do a little bit of therapy. We're going to just kind of air out our grievances now that, Tom Brady has hung it up for good. And we'll talk about the worst dick kickings that we've experienced on our teams, not the teams that we play on. It'd be cool if we played on them, but the Pennsylvania football teams, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got one for Pittsburgh, buddy?
Oh, God, I could pick a multitude. There was, of course, Anthony Smith guaranteeing victory against 2007's undefeated Patriots. As you'd expect, that didn't turn out well. The guarantee was for naught. Brady and Randy Moss dunked all over him. There was the Jesse James caught that goddamn ball game. Of course, the officials saw otherwise. Jesse James did not catch that ball by the letter of the law, which is horseshit. But my personal least favorite, I guess, would be the 2016 AFC Championship, pitting Tom Brady's New England Patriots against my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. It was a trap I often fell into as a Steelers fan, believing they had a shot against Tom Brady and company. I never fell harder than I did in 2016. Those Steelers, they won 9 straight games en route to the AFC title in Foxborough. The Killer Bees, Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell were all at the height of their powers. Their defense had studs all over the front seven. They had Stephon Tuitt, they had Javon Hargrave, they had Bud Dupree, James Harrison, Lawrence Timmons, Ryan Shazier, Cam Hayward. They allowed an average 16.5 points per game on their 9-game winning streak. If ever there were a year for them to get over the Tom Brady hump, that was it. Psych! Business as usual for Tom Brady and the Pats, who dunked all over Pittsburgh from the jump. They were up 30-9 in the fourth quarter. Collegiate lacrosse star Chris Hogan more than doubled up Antonio Brown on the stat sheet. 9 catches, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. Antonio Brown 7 for 77. But at that point, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and wide-eyed, little-known Chris Hogan was running laps around him. It was just so typical to get your hopes as high as they could possibly be, and for Tom Brady to squash them like a bug, like he did so many damn times. In that game, Tom was 32 of 42, 384 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ho-hum, another day at the office. Big Ben, the Steelers were no match. It was everything I'd come to expect from Tom Brady versus my Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm glad I don't have to see it again, to be honest.
I can tell that one stung a little bit, and I'm sorry for you. So obviously liking a team in the NFC, there weren't as many dick kickings for the Eagles as AFC teams who saw him more frequently. Tom Brady played the Eagles 9 total times. He went 7-2, nice in those contests. The worst loss to Tom Brady came in week 2 of the 2003 season when the Patriots showed up to the first ever game at Lincoln Financial Field and just beat the absolute dog shit out of the Philadelphia Eagles 31-10. That was a really, really ugly grand opening for Lincoln Financial Field. But I would say the biggest dick kick, at least for me, that Tom Brady delivered to the Eagles happened on the biggest stage in their second Super Bowl appearance in franchise history. This, of course, was Super Bowl 39 when the Patriots beat the Eagles 24-17 21. This was actually Tom Brady's first Super Bowl that he won where he wasn't named MVP. Deion Branch was actually the MVP in that one. Tom Brady threw for 236 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. Totally opposite of the other side. Donovan McNabb threw 3 interceptions in that game. It totally broke my 11-year-old little heart. The Eagles actually got to exercise those demons, though. I'm not going to let you forget this. They did beat Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52, 41 to 33, just again, in case you forgot. So that means that the Eagles are forever going to be the last team to beat Tom Brady in the big game. And I know this is about Tom Brady, not the Philadelphia Eagles. So this is all to say that the Philadelphia Eagles will also be the last team that Tom Brady ever beat when he knocked the Eagles out of the playoffs this year, 31-15 in the wild card, in the wild card round. So Tommy, don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you, buddy. Good luck. And good riddance.
Lest we not forget, along with 3 interceptions, Donovan McNabb famously puked in that game. And of course, Terrell Owens gutted it out with a broken frickin' leg. So
like Greg Jennings. Yeah.
Like Greg Jennings. That was certainly a memorable game for the Birds fans. I kind of expected that would be your answer. And I also expected you would make sure to mention Nick Foles and company. You didn't fail me in that regard.
Never will, buddy. Never will.
Like you said, that was Brady's 3rd Super Bowl victory against the Eagles in 04. And by that point, he had definitely become a villain, maybe not to the degree that he would become, but the tide started to turn on him a little bit. And I think that's kind of what we forget, is that very early in Tom Brady's career, he wasn't the villain. People weren't yelling about Spygate or Deflategate or his unusual dietary choices or his supermodel wife or his mouth kissing his kid or the fictitious Bill Belichick system that allowed Tom Brady to thrive. That's a whole side tangent, but shut that. Nobody else ever had a system to credit their success to. Just because Tom Brady's so good, we're going to, no, stop it. There is no, anyways, I'm sorry.
No, if you could write the code on how to develop a Brady, I would certainly take it as a low-level offensive coordinator. I'm happy to look into that code for you.
Anyways, so I think before I get too far off track, we kind of forget that in the beginning, Tom Brady was like that heroic underdog, that scrappy, little-known 6th-round pick, kind of lanky, right, who didn't look like your typical franchise quarterback. It's so easy to forget Tom Brady's humble beginnings, but those are kind of my first memories of him, as being 9 years old, house and pizza slices at some Super Bowl party. I didn't care about the game, and all the adults were going crazy screaming for Tom Brady. That includes you, Mom. I know you're watching. I know you hate Tom Brady now, but you were cheering for him in 2001, and don't pretend you weren't. Anyways, the viewing public got a little shots fired. That's right, Linda. The viewing public definitely got burnt out on Tom Brady a lot sooner than Tom Brady got burnt out on playing the game. That chip on his shoulder was ever present. That work ethic, that never say die attitude, it burnt for 2 full decades. And that's what led to the greatest professional football career any of us will ever bear witness to. Tom Brady, it's been a privilege. I hope there's never anyone else like you, you bastard.
Retweet. And again, there probably will not be. Okay, we can move on from Tom Brady because I guess we spent enough time bitching about him and ultimately raising up that he's the best ever. Moving on to some other stuff that's going on in the NFL. So this came up last Tuesday, I believe it was. Yeah, Tuesday, February 1st. Brian Flores is filing a class action lawsuit. Yes, suing the NFL. Yep. Sorry, lost my place on the page. Yeah, he is filing a class action lawsuit against the NFL, alleging that there is racial discrimination in the NFL's hiring process. Not a good look. Doesn't seem like it's going to be a good time.
No, and he targeted 3 teams specifically. He's suing the NFL as a whole and 3 of its teams, the Miami Dolphins, who of course just released him, the Denver Broncos, and the New York Giants. His specific arguments against all 3, in summation, the Dolphins supposedly incentivized him to tank, offering him $100K per loss, which is a pretty good gig if you can get it. The Giants supposedly only interviewed him to comply with the Rooney Rule. It seemed they were already committed to Brian Dable, given Bill Belichick's accidental text, which was kind of amusing because I think everybody has fired off a text they didn't mean to before. And seeing Bill Belichick get exposed for that big boo-boo is, not going to lie, pretty amusing. But of course, Bill Belichick's a crotchety old grandpa. You can't fault him for maybe not being so in touch with technology in the modern day. He famously says that he doesn't use MySpace or Twitter.
I'm sure he doesn't.
And then lastly, the Denver Broncos, Brian Flores accuses them of interviewing him just to comply with the Rooney Rule again. They also said that John Elway and others were visibly hungover and disinterested during his head coaching interview. Obviously, not a good look for the league or any of these teams, if true. Brian Flores undoubtedly has a point. There is no doubt a dearth of black coaches in the NFL, given the league is predominantly black as far as players and assistant coaches go. But what's tough for Brian Flores is the burden of proof is on him. The NFL is about the brand, about the shield first and foremost. They'll pull out all the stops to protect their brand. They'll hire the best lawyers money could buy. Brian Flores is going to need stronger proof. He's going to need somebody to corroborate his story from Miami's front office or from within his coaching staffs. Like somewhere along the way, he's going to need better proof than an accidental Bill Belichick text, I think, in order to come out victorious.
Yeah, you would think the whole litigation of the thing is it's something that I don't really feel like comfortable getting into because I'm not a lawyer, but you're right. He probably does need more concrete proof, but that's, we'll kind of see how it all plays out. It looks like there's going to be a lot of stones that are unturned. It looks like this thing is going to get really, really ugly before it gets better or justice is served or what have you. The text messages, like you said, were significant because Brian Flores hadn't interviewed with New York yet. So understanding that Brian Daboll was ultimately going to get that job, like Brian Flores had to be like, okay, this is absolute bullshit. You're just interviewing me to check off a box, right? That kind of sparked the whole thing. The 2019 Broncos interview that you brought up was sort of interesting as well, like the executive showing up an hour late and being visibly hungover. Now, as somebody who did visit Denver, Colorado this year to go watch the Eagles beat the Broncos, I can attest that it is certainly possible to be hungover in Denver, but that's certainly not how you do business, especially with somebody like Brian Flores. I mean, the dude is certainly qualified to go lead a team. You look at what he did in Miami. He was 24-25 in 3 seasons with the Dolphins, but that first season was 5-11. The second 2, he went 10-6 and 9-8. Over the last 2 seasons, he had a better record or was on par with guys like John Harbaugh and Cliff Kingsbury, Mike McCarthy, Bill Belichick himself, Kyle Shanahan, Zach Taylor. So he certainly can coach some football. You brought up that the NFL is sort of the argument against, or what I guess loud minority on the internet sort of points to, is that the NFL can't be racist because 70% of the players are black. And that's true. That is a true figure. You could actually look that up on the NFL's website, but I don't necessarily know if that plays into the argument of racism on the coaching end of things. There's currently 1 black head coach in the NFL, not including the 49ers. No, Mike McDaniel just got hired.
Yes.
Where did Mike McDaniel just get hired? Because I saw it was big news. We'll get back to that. But
he got hired by the Miami Dolphins, as a matter
by the Miami Dolphins. There you go. Yep. And he is biracial, but even so, right? I think I was listening to Darius Butler last week, and he made a point about, this percentage and kind of leaking into coaching. The only true meritocracy in the league is the actual players, right? Players affect the bottom line for owners. So racism, nepotism, any other bias that you could think of, it can't really impact those decisions. Whereas like on the GM and the coaching side, it doesn't have to be entirely based on merit, because there's, you think, like hundreds of qualified individuals that could get a head coaching job or could get a front office job, right? But they're all, in a field competing for 32 jobs. There's not nearly as many jobs as there are qualified candidates. Again, this is going to get really ugly before it gets pretty. I certainly understand why Brian Flores is frustrated here and why the lawsuit is essentially being brought on.
Yeah, deservedly so. at least in the sense that he certainly has a gripe. You know, he's not way overstepping his bounds by alleging this. It's just, as I said in the beginning, it is going to be tough to find any concrete proof. We'll keep an eye on it, see where it goes. I do want to note before we move on to something a little more lighthearted, I guess. It is unintentionally hilarious that guys like Hugh Jackson and Marvin Lewis are piling on now and also claiming they were encouraged to lose. They might be telling the truth, but boy, the optics did not say that Hugh Jackson needed any help losing ball games.
No, certainly not, right? Brian Flores said that he was offered up to $100,000 for every game that he lost by owner Steve Ross. Now, that's its own issue, especially with sports betting and gambling and all that kind of stuff. That could get real ugly as well. I feel like Hugh Jackson was more comfortable to kind of come out and speak about that because he's currently the head coach at Grambling State University. It doesn't seem like he has any interest in going back to the NFL. So speaking out against them and kind of, backing Brian Flores really isn't going to hurt him in the long run. Side note, Hugh Jackson set up an NIL, a name, image, and likeness deal at the HBCU that he coaches at, again, Grambling State University. For all of his scholarship athletes, they're going to receive annual income while in college for every single one of his scholarship athletes. That's awesome.
Yeah, well done, Hugh. Even if it didn't work out for the Browns and it's still hard to buy what he's saying, that's kudos to you, Hugh. Glad to see it's working out for him. Anyways, we'll jump into our next subject of conversation here. The Washington football team is no more. They've settled on a name. They will now be the Washington Commanders. What do you think? You like it or no?
No, in a word, no. It does, and I saw this everywhere. It does sound like a generic video game that you're gonna play in like your fantasy mode or whatever. But personally, I would have preferred if they named the team the Hogs, paid some homage to the Redskins' offensive line in the '80s and '90s. Guys like Jeff Bostic and Ray Brown and Fred Dean and Joe Jacoby and those dudes. Don't really care for the Commanders name. It's got to be really tough to chant. Let's go Commanders, or I like the idea of shortening it to Manders because it just sounds funny. But I also have seen commies thrown around, which is probably not great, especially being in Washington.
Yeah, I do want to note that I call my girlfriend Amanda Mander a lot of the time, so I would probably force her to become a fan of the Commanders in turn. Maybe I will now that you mention that.
Huh?
But now Manders doesn't really have a much better ring to it outside the confines of my love life. You mentioned commies, which I think is kind of amusing because I was wondering, is somebody going to find a way to be offended by this name? Commander in itself does imply kind of authority, subservience, obedience, some things that certainly have some negative connotations. Uh, I don't know, but like you said, it's kind of generic, boring. I don't know what their mascot is. It's not easy to chant. It's clunky. There's not a lot that Commander has going for it. I kind of just wish they stuck with the football team until they came up with something a little better. But here we are. The Washington Commanders are ready to rock. Their uniforms do look kind of cool, so there's something to be said for that. And another unintentionally hilarious consequence of this is, and I've seen it floating around on Twitter, the Steelers have the terrible towel. Washington has the cum rag.
Oh, God. What fun in Washington. Look, I mean, okay, the name stinks. The logo kind of stinks as well. But when it's all said and done, winning is a phenomenal deodorant. If the Commanders come out and win the NFC East next season, nobody's going to care what they call themselves. Also, it kind of seems like the name is sort of the last of their worries now. Like last week, the Daniel Snyder thing resurfaced where former employees are in a dispute with him back in 2020. There was 15 former female employees who spoke out about sexual harassment that they experienced in Washington over the course of 18 years. So that might be a little bit more pressing than the Washington Commanders and their name.
Yep, it seems like regardless of what name they have, though, problematic things continue to be attached to them. So, folks, it's more than a name. All right, this organization has been lousy for a while, and regardless of what name they're playing under, that does not seem likely to change with Dan Snyder at the helm. He's probably the first terrible GM of 3 different teams, although it's all the same one team, which is a little amusing side note. But anyways, that is pretty much all we have to say about the other happenings around the league. At long last, we are going to jump into what you're all here for. If you're still here with us, I want to thank you for bearing through the first agonizing 25 minutes. I promise it picks up in the second half. We're here to talk about Super Bowl 56.
I don't know. You promised that last week, and then we just kind of babbled on and on and on, and stayed up way too late past our bedtime. No, the Super Bowl is happening next week. I'm excited to kind of preview this, talk about some matchups that are going to happen within the game itself. I will ultimately get to a prediction at the end. We'll start with Cincinnati's offense versus the LA Rams defense, a matchup that is a whole lot of star power just on its surface. Is Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey. Now, that, of course, will not be an exclusive matchup. They don't really travel Jalen Ramsey to be with the star receiver. They didn't do that with guys like DK Metcalf or Justin Jefferson. And I'm sure that's schematic. I'm sure it's easier to know where Jalen Ramsey's going to line up if he does travel rather than have to find him every single play. But when Jalen Ramsey and Jamar Chase are pitted against one another, going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, loads of fun to watch. I mean, that kind of goes for Ramsey versus whichever Cincinnati wide receiver, because T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd are no slouches. You know, he's going to have his work cut out for him for 60 minutes. But as you said, Chase versus Ramsey, it's kind of best on best. It's the matchups we look forward to seeing all year long. These two guys were at the pinnacle, the height of their powers in 2021. Jamar Chase had 81 catches for 1,455 yards, a rookie record, and 13 touchdowns. Jalen Ramsey on the other side had 67 tackles, 16 pass breakups, and 4 interceptions. So another season on par with his prototypical excellent production. And then you kind of look at the measurables. These guys, they got speed to burn. Chase ran a 4.34 40-yard dash. Jalen Ramsey rather ran a 4.41 40-yard dash. They both had comparable verticals. Chase 41 inches, Ramsey 41 and a half. Jamar Chase is 6 foot, 201 pounds. Jalen Ramsey 6'1", 208. These guys are so evenly matched physically. I got to double down with what you said. It's a lot of fun to watch. What I'm kind of most interested to see is if Jalen Ramsey is going to use that same kind of physical press man style he's known for. We always see him jamming guys off the line, right? Jamar Chase, and we've seen this a few times as well. He's burnt dudes who made the mistake of trying to get handsy with him right at the line. Right, I remember him doing that to the Ravens a couple times. He makes guys pay if they overstep one bit. You know, if he gets even with you, he is gone. Right, so it's going to be interested to see if Chase or Ramsey are a little more tentative or hesitant out the gate as they kind of feel one another out. I don't know. Who do you think who's got the edge in this matchup?
Oh God, do I have to pick? Oh man, we have the edge. We have the edge because we get to watch it. I love that you brought out the combine numbers. I didn't even think to do so. Just to talk about how evenly matched they are physically. Also, like kind of going back to what you said about T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Whoever Jalen Ramsey lines up on, it's not going to be an easy task. The Bengals were actually one of 4 teams to have 3 players eclipse 800 receiving yards in the regular season this year. That the other teams included the Bucks, the Cowboys, and the 49ers. So it's kind of like pick your poison. And it also, I guess, kind of getting away a little bit from the Chase and Ramsey specifically, it's going to impact Darius Williams and David Long as well. They're going to have to show up ready to work. Whoever Jalen Ramsey is not covering, those dudes are going to be tasked with covering either T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. I know Darius Williams gave up 135 yards on 9 targets 2 weeks ago in the divisional round. He's going to have to show out a little bit more impressively if the Rams are able to kind of keep that Cincinnati offense in check.
Yeah, you're not kidding. But I think it's going to be offensive fireworks galore on both sides of the ball. As far as Chase and Ramsey, I think they will both get their share of dubs. I think I'm giving a slight edge to Ramsey because he does have a little more experience, a little more big game experience. I think, like, don't get me wrong, I think on the box score at the end of the day, both these guys will show nicely. If I had to favor one, though, who was going to get that knockout blow, to kind of give their team the edge, I'm giving it to Jalen Ramsey, I think. He's just got that swagger about him that the Rams are firing on all cylinders. But I don't want to get too far ahead before we get to predictions and the like. But
Mm.
as you said, as I've said, Chase versus Ramsey, all those matchups will be so much fun. So looking forward to it. Matchup that I doubt Cincinnati Bengals are and their fans are looking forward to is that O-line against this mean LA pass rush. I mean, we watched Cincy's O-line give up 9 sacks against the Tennessee Titans, who were led by guys like Bud Dupree or Harold Landry. No slouch, but there's no Aaron Donald, no Von Miller in that group. How in God's green earth is Cincinnati going to hold up against LA's pass rush?
They're not. They're not. No, Aaron Donald and Von Miller each have 16 quarterback pressures in the playoffs this year. That's just ridiculous. And then you have to block Von Miller as well, who had 11 and a half sacks this season, including the postseason and his time in Denver. Leonard Floyd had 10 and a half sacks. The Bengals O-line, like you said, gave up 9 to the Titans. They did fare a little bit better last week against KC's pass rushers. They only allowed 1 sack to Melvin Ingram. But I think, the verdict is you got to get the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands quickly and kind of minimize the impact of that LA pass rush. On obvious passing downs, like 3rd and long, good freaking luck, dude. Those guys are going to get after it. I would expect pressure and Burrow's face in all those situations.
Yeah, to me, this could kind of be the difference maker in terms of mismatches or advantages for one side. The Rams had 50 regular season sacks. That was a top 3 mark in football. We mentioned the names already: Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Von Miller. That's one of the best. We talked about receiving trios. That's one of the best pass rushing triumvirates in football, and it's not close. Von Miller has 8 sacks in his last 9 games. On the opposite side of the ball, Joe Burrow got sacked 51 times in the regular season and 12 more in the playoffs. So dude's been dumped 63 times already. If there's a team that's going to push it to 70, it's going to be these Rams. But not for nothing, Joe Burrow's the first quarterback to ever take 50 sacks and advance to the Super Bowl. We saw him, bounce back from a 9 sack showing by the Tennessee Titans and managed to win the game. This offense is explosive enough to kind of, I don't want to say make up for this disadvantage, but scheme around it as best they can. But it's so tough to play behind the sticks. If the Rams are able to get after Cincy the way we expect, that is probably their best recipe for success. I think we saw that last year with Tampa Bay and KC. That was a colossal difference, and it could be again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Talk about an accolade that no quarterback ever wants, getting sacked 50 plus times and still going to the Super Bowl. Good for you, Joe Burrow, buddy. Good for you. Let's flip the field a little bit here. Let's look at the LA Rams on offense and Cincinnati on defense. So we'll start with the LA Rams wide receiving core. Led by, of course, none other than the Triple Crown winner Cooper Kupp versus the Cincinnati Bengals secondary. Again, you do have to cover Cooper Kupp. That sucks. You also have to cover Odell Beckham Jr. as well. Good luck, Cincinnati secondary.
Yeah, they could certainly use a number 1 corner on par with Jalen Ramsey. They don't have that, which is unfortunate because Cooper Kupp is every bit as good as Jamar Chase, maybe even a little better. We talked about the potency of that trio on the other side: Chase, Higgins, Boyd. If there's anyone that can match them, it's probably Kupp, Odell, and Van Jefferson. Since he's secondary, though, let's not count him out right away. I mean, obviously, these guys went toe-to-toe last week with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Mecole Hardman, the like. They gave up their share of plays, but they made them when it counted, right? We saw that with Von Bell and Jesse Bates, that colossal overtime pick against Tyreek Hill. So even though they may look overmatched, we've seen Cincy secondary play over their head. And that's kind of been the story of these guys all year long. They're a group, they're corners that are composed of veteran cast-offs, right? Guys like Mike Hilton from Pittsburgh, Chidobe Awuzie, Eli Apple, right? Much maligned, but no shortage of plays made this year. All these guys kind of at times were regarded as busts, unheralded, what have you, and they've combined to give Cincy a good enough secondary to have them playing in February, right, where everybody wants to be.
Mhm.
So we'll see if they can play over their heads once more. I think it's going to come down to Cincy's front seven making plays and those safeties we mentioned, which are a phenomenal duo. Von Bell, Jesse Bates, those are two of the best tackling safeties in the game. I think it's going to come down to those guys being able to stand up and kind of prop up this overmatched cornerback group.
Yeah, at least help them out, right? At least give them a puncher's chance. I believe we are mispronouncing Chidobe. I think it is Chidobe. I was listening to the Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator speak this week, and he pronounced it as Chidobe. So if we did that and we offended you, Mr. Awuzie, we do apologize. Would also like to address sort of a boo-boo that I made last week before I kind of go on and talk a little more about the Rams receivers and Cincinnati secondary. So I meant to call Eli Apple last week a very, very good corner sarcastically. I was still recovering from the stroke that I had when I couldn't figure out the word route. That's why it's written a whole bunch of times on the whiteboard behind me. I sort of served my penance here. If anybody, got confused about that, it was supposed to be sarcastic. It just did not come out as sarcastic. But going back to kind of the secondary for Cincinnati and the Rams receivers. So in the postseason, Cooper Kupp has 25 receptions. That leads the NFL. 386 yards of receiving also leads the NFL, and has 4 receiving touchdowns. That's second in the entire playoffs. So that dude commands attention from defensive backs, like we've mentioned. And Odell Beckham Jr. as well. In the NFC Championship game, he had 9 catches on 11 targets. That dude was super, super productive. He had 113 yards in that game as well. Also, something that I found kind of interesting about the Cincinnati Bengals defensive backs, an article came out not too long ago that said that every Tuesday, that whole room gets together to watch film and eat Chick-fil-A breakfast. Just want to shout out Chick-fil-A breakfast because it's really freaking good. This week's Chick-fil-A breakfast has to be a little bit more worrisome. You're probably not having as much fun. Also want to pull out something else that Eli Apple did this week on Twitter. He offered Tyreek Hill and Nicole Hartman tickets to the Super Bowl on Twitter, so he does continue to suck. He has given up 14 receptions on 20 targets this postseason. That dude is so easy to hate, man.
Yeah, but he can run his mouth like he's on par with a Richard Sherman or a Jalen Ramsey. So you got to admire the swagger, I guess, even if it is a little misplaced. It's kind of reminiscent of like Freddie Mitchell, right, or somebody who was basically just known for flapping their gums, even if their play was never on that level.
Hey, 4th and 26, bro. 4th and 26. Don't come at me with Freddie Mitchell.
And Fred X had one freaking play. He's still that man. 20 years later, he's at some Wawa somewhere fucking shouting about 4th and 26. I'm tired of it. Bo Jackson is overrated anyway.
Oh, God. What are we doing here?
What
are we doing?
If you're here, thanks for tuning in, I guess. Anyway.
God almighty.
Anyway, yeah, we kind of said it as nicely as we could. This Cincy secondary, much like their O-line, appears to be overmatched. They've kind of played over their heads all year. That's why they are where they are, but they're going to have to do it once more against maybe the fiercest trio in football, if not for that one on the other side in orange and black, right? They're both in the discussion, which is why we kind of think this one is going to be offensively driven, fireworks galore, exactly what the NFL wants, right? Unless a couple other guys on Cincy's defense and Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard have something to say about it, they got to be chomping at the bit to pin their ears back and get after Matt Stafford a little. Who you favoring in that one? 2 Cincy solid pass rushers or the Rams stalwart offensive line led, of course, by 40-year-old Andrew Whitworth?
Yeah, who's older than both of the coaches in this matchup. Good for that, dude. Good for taking care of your body. You did mention that Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard are, itching to pin their ears back. The Rams really don't allow you to do that. I mean, obviously in situations where it's 3rd and long and what have you, they can, right? But Sean McVay typically will use scheme and run the ball to open up play action behind it. That's kind of their favorite thing to do. he makes pretty much all of his plays look the same to the defense. That's kind of why it is so effective for him. Diving into that actual matchup, so Andrew Whitworth gave up 5 sacks in the regular season. He gave up 1 sack in the postseason thus far. Rob Havenstein, it's spelled like Havenstein, whatever. He gave up 7 sacks in the regular season, but has not yet given up a sack in the postseason. I mean, those dudes are going to have their hands full with Hendrickson and Hubbard. But if I have to give the edge to somebody, to one of those pairs, I'm going with the Rams offensive tackles.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. They're 2 veteran guys. You know, they've Havenstein. That's how I've always said it. I could be wrong, but I'm going to stick with my guns here. Havenstein, another veteran guy. He's been a 99 game starter, been in the league since 2015, right? So these are no slouch. Neither of these players, I should say, are slouches by any means. They're going to have their work cut out for them. I do think Hendrickson and Hubbard will manage to make a play or 2 over the course of this game. But I think maybe Cincy's interior O-line is going to be their best recipe for success in terms of rushing the passer. Larry Ogunjobi and BJ Hill combined for 12.5 sacks this year. We saw BJ Hill make that big play last week with the pick. Again, love seeing a big man make a play like that. Shouts to BJ Hill. I think if Cincy's interior can kind of collapse the middle of the pocket, force Matt Stafford to get off his spot, then the edge guys would be better set, better served to kind of get after him as well. But like you said, the Rams offense is kind of designed to protect their quarterback, especially one with the presence of Stafford. So it is going to be tough. It's going to be a lot for Cincy to overcome. Is there I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned, yeah, it is what it is. Hey, Cheeto Bay Havenstein has been doing his thing for quite some time. Good for that dude. Good for that dude. Yeah. So the last thing, I guess, at least that I have, in order to be successful, you do have to block these edge rushers with tackles. Trey Hendrickson made it abundantly clear against the Raiders in the wild card round why you can't expect a tight end to be able to block him one-on-one. You're definitely going to want to put a tackle on that guy when you're going to end up throwing the football. But again, I tend to favor the Rams tackles here, but we'll see.
Yes, we certainly will. As you mentioned, 2 guys, the head ball coaches in these games, are younger than some guys suiting up. Of course, shouts once more to 40-year-old Andrew Whitworth. That is remarkable to have a 40-year-old left tackle getting a start in a Super Bowl. The longtime Cincinnati Bengal gets his chance to get a ring to cap off his career against his former ball club for 11 years. That's a nice story. Personally, I'm pulling for him. But not to get too far off track, I know you wanted to talk about the 2 head ball coaches here, being a ball coach yourself, the young wonderkins in Sean McVay and Zach Taylor, both of whom are under 40. Sean McVay, of course, 5 years in the league, has a sterling record, 55-26. He has 3 NFC West titles and 2 Super Bowl appearances. Zach Taylor, on the other hand, his record as the head ball coach, not so sparkling, 16-32-1, which is even more remarkable considering the fact that he's coaching in a Super Bowl. So obviously, first 2 years, not much to write home about, but the 3rd year has been better than he probably ever could have imagined. And on that, I'll say, take it away, Hayden.
I plan to, yeah. So Zach Taylor's first season was the worst in Bengals franchise history at 2-14, and then, like you said, with sort of the overall record, he did slightly improve the next year to 4-11-1. I know exactly who the one is. That's unfortunate for me, but this season, Zach Taylor did complete the historic turnaround from the league's worst record to Super Bowl participant. Only the 2003 Carolina Panthers and the 1981 San Francisco 49ers had made that sort of turnaround in 3 seasons. So it really does speak to what Zach Taylor is doing in that locker room. It is just a remarkable turnaround. Sean McVay and Zach Taylor are actually pretty familiar with one another. Zach Taylor served as Sean McVay's quarterback and wide receiver coach before he took the Cincinnati Bengals job. That sort of sparked the whole, if you've had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, you're going to get a head coaching opportunity somewhere. Let's see. So Sean McVay is headed to his 2nd Super Bowl in 5 seasons. So he is actually the youngest coach to do so, to reach the Super Bowl twice in his first 5 seasons. Some other guys on this list, Tom Flores, who was the Hall of Fame class of 2021. Joe Gibbs was the Hall of Fame class of 1996. Jimmy Johnson was the Hall of Fame class of 2020. And Mike Tomlin, who's the Hall of Fame class of 5 years after he decides to put his whistle on his mantle for good. You got to favor Sean McVay in this matchup. I think he's been there. He's done that. He lost one, so I feel like that he fuels the fire even more. But I don't want to take away from what Zach Taylor has done as a head coach. It just has been phenomenal.
Yeah. And again, you don't want to take success for granted, but you get the feel the way both of these guys are trending, the way their careers have gone, that they'll both be back on this stage, but you can never say for sure. And you can never say for certain. I'm sorry. Mike Tomlin has.
It's not even late this time. Last time it was like 1 a.m., so we had an excuse. It is what it is.
I'm sorry. Anyways, Mike Tomlin, of course, hasn't been back to a Super Bowl since 2010, which gets my goat, but we're not going to go there. These chances, these opportunities are so limited. You never know. So both of these guys have the chance at a career-making moment. They no doubt are chomping at the bit to get there. We'll be excited to see who ultimately adds a Lombardi to their trophy case, to their mantle. Sean McVay is on a Hall of Fame trajectory. It's far too soon to anoint him or anything like that. But Super Bowl trophy this Sunday would go a long way towards, kind of solidifying his legacy and going from good to great, I think. Zach Taylor has more to prove, but obviously he's set up for success years to come with a franchise quarterback, perhaps the best offensive covered in the league. Just so excited to see who ultimately comes ahead and how these guys kind of scheme around each other's brilliance, yada, yada. Another guy with a chance at a career-making opportunity is one Matthew Stafford. Happy birthday, Matt. What I want to know, actually, Mike Veronic, if he's listening, posed this question to me, and I thought it was worth us talking about. Is Matt Stafford in the Hall of Fame with a Super Bowl ring? What do you think?
So he's the bastard. I've been thinking about this all day. I don't even know if I've come up with an answer. I'm going to try to talk through it and see if I find an answer somewhere along the way. Damn you, Mike Veronic. Matthew Stafford is 12th all-time in passing yards with 5 yards less than 50,000. He has 323 touchdowns, which is also 12th all-time, and 161 interceptions. So a pretty solid ratio. There's currently 34 quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame. So just like on its surface, being 12th all time in those statistics, you would think that that would get you in. Although I think that like comparing his passing yards to some other dudes, he has 30,000 less passing yards than Drew Brees, who's second all time. Like whatever, it is what it is. Drew Brees was Drew Brees. 21,000 less than Brett Favre, 7,000 less than Eli Manning, 24,000 less than Big Ben Roethlisberger. I think that having a sub 500 winning record is not really going to help his case, even if he did spend a decade in Detroit, and I'm not faulting him for that, or maybe I am a little bit by saying that, but I don't know if one Lombardi does solidify him as a Hall of Famer per se.
I actually tend to agree. Now don't get me wrong. I think if he wins the Super Bowl Sunday and then decides to retire immediately after, he likely won't, of course. If he did, I think he may ultimately get in one day. He certainly wouldn't be first ballot. However, I think what he really needs to, kind of entrench his legacy is one ring, and I'd say another 3 to 4 years of sustained success, playoff berths, playoff wins, right? He can keep padding the numbers, because that's kind of the era we're in, where these stats are discounted a little bit. Trailing all the time with the Lions helps with stat padding. Having an 86-95-1 record as a starter is less than stellar. And of course, playing on the Monstar Rams is no doubt a factor working in his favor, right? A lot of guys would kill to play with Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, Von Miller, Odell Beckham, etc. So not to discredit Matthew Stafford, and I think if he does win a ring, he certainly joins the discussion and maybe gets a little closer. but I think he probably needs to get that career record above 500 and breach the top 10 and those numbers we mentioned before he becomes anything resembling a lock.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, we're not trying to rake the guy over the coals on his birthday. We wouldn't want to do that. But like you said, a couple more years in LA, have some sustained success, show that Detroit was the problem and not Matthew Stafford is probably going to bode better in his favor for that Hall of Fame conversation. Like you mentioned, certainly not first ballot or anything like that. But let's see if he sticks around LA and, wins a couple more games and is able to kind of solidify himself there.
Yeah, certainly could be not long before Matt Stafford becomes a lock, perhaps starting with this Sunday. I guess that's as good a segue as we'll get into our score predictions. I'll go ahead first. Of course, I'm going to take the long, meandering way to get there and tell you why what I think is so important and why, if you're placing bets, you have to side with me and take. There's the cliffhanger. These teams are comparable in a multitude of ways, right? Yeah, you like that?
Yeah.
We got
Yeah.
we got gifted gunslinging quarterbacks in Stafford and Joe Burrow. We have loaded wide receiving cores, which we've waxed poetic about time and again, right? Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, C.J. Uzama. There's great pass rushers on both sides of the ball. Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and playmaking secondaries buoyed by guys like Jalen Ramsey, Von Bell, Jesse Bates. So when that is the case, right, when these guys are so evenly matched on both sides of the ball in so many ways, and before I will move on, I want to mention just how evenly matched they are. All right, Cincy's offense, 27 points per game this year. LA's offense, 27 points per game this year. LA's defense, 17th in yards allowed, 22 points per game. Cincy's defense, 18th in yards allowed, 22 points per game. These are almost identical across the board. It's kind of remarkable. I don't know that we've seen teams that were so closely aligned in so many ways in those kind of major stats. But anyways, when that is the case, you start to look for where the greatest advantage or disadvantage is, where the greatest mismatch is, so to speak. In Super Bowl 56, and we mentioned this once already. It's no doubt LA's ferocious pass rush and Cincy's sieve of an O-line. We saw that last year when Tampa Bay feasted on Kansas City's O-line. That a quarterback under pressure all day long is tough to overcome. Playing behind the sticks is tough to overcome. We mentioned the skill players, the skill talent, the big arms on both sides. Big plays and big points are going to be in abundance in this one, no doubt. The difference will be in whose D can capitalize on an offensive miscue. That being the case, I'm taking the side that boasts Aaron Donald, that boasts Von Miller, that boasts Jalen Ramsey. Give me the Rams 31-28. Sean McVay's getting his ring. Matt Stafford's getting his ring. Book it. Place the bets.
Yeah, there it was. Nice. I love the way you got there. Also, since you mentioned bets, this was something that I saw that I need to bring up here. Mattress Mac, who's like this furniture mogul in Houston, placed the largest bet on a Super Bowl ever at $4.5 million. First off, must be super nice to just toss down $4.5 million and just be like, yeah, if I win, yeah, it's fun. If I lose, I lose. If he does win, it's going to be like $7.7 million at plus 170 odds. So good for you. Good luck to Mattress Mac. He bet on the Bengals, so maybe going against what you said here, but that I saw that and was like, holy shit, could you imagine? So I didn't want to agree with you, and I'm not saying that I did yet because there has to be some suspense. The Bengals and the Rams both knew how to score points this year. The Bengals scored 30 plus points in 6 games during the regular season. They're averaging 24 points per game in the postseason. The Rams scored 30 plus points in 7 games during the regular season, and they're currently averaging 28 a game in the postseason. Very, very evenly matched, like you brought up. Dang it, I wanted to go with my heart, which is the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not gonna. Like you said, you got to look for the mismatches. It's going to be tougher for the Bengals to stack up against the pass rush of the LA Rams. I think that ultimately will come down to a field goal versus a touchdown on a possession, which could ultimately lose you the game. Good God almighty. I am going to take the Rams 35-27. And with that, I'm saying that Evan McPherson ties Adam Vinatieri's single season playoff field goal record by hitting 2 of them. I think the Rams, it might just be a little bit too much for the Bengals to overcome. The clock is about to strike midnight on Cinderella. It's been a hell of a ride. I'm taking the Rams.
Yep, we like football, likes the Rams. In a week, we'll probably be back to accept our just desserts when the Bengals are hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. But otherwise, if the Rams win, we'll be back in a week to say nana nana boo boo. Before we get out of here, we're going to have some fun Super Bowl themed We Like Football bonanza games that we love to play so much. That being, of course, start one, sit one, cut one. I'll start with Super Bowl staples, right? Some of our favorite dishes that are so often served on the Super Bowl. You got to start one, you got to sit one, you got to cut one. I got chicken wing dip. I got a giant submarine sandwich. I'm talking that sucker that's about 3 foot long. You know the one, right? And cocktail weenies or pigs in a blanket. You know what I'm talking about. Those little wieners wrapped into crescent rolls. So, so delicious. Start one, sit one, cut one. What do you got?
This might be the easiest one of these that we have ever done. Chicken wing dip is always going to be my start. Chicken wing dip is just phenomenal. I might end up making chicken wing dip at my house, which is where I'm going to be watching the Super Bowl. I am starting chicken wing dip, and it's not even close. I'll sit the giant hoagie. I am a big fan of the giant hoagie. Like you mentioned, those things are huge. It's just delicious. Usually you're getting like an Italian one or some sort of cold cut, and that's awesome to have with your Super Bowl watching. Cocktail weenies, yeah, they're fine. Yeah, I don't need them. I'll cut them. They don't need to be here for me.
I'm actually going to differ with you slightly. Not with my start, as you said. It's a lock. It's automatic. It's first ballot. Chicken wing dip. Chicken wing dip tastes like the Super Bowl. If your Super Bowl party does not have chicken wing dip, get the fuck out. You're at the wrong place. All right, chicken wing dip.
Hang on. So you're having your own Super Bowl party, and you got to get the fuck out of it if you don't have chicken wing dip. I think that's fair. The punishment fits the crime. that is fair.
I may not have worded that perfectly, but in either case, it remains the same. If there's not chicken wing dip, leave and either get some or don't come back. All right, the house isn't yours any longer. It deserves a more suitable owner. Get the fucking chicken wing dip. It's the Super Bowl. It starts every time. I'm gonna sit those cocktail weenies because I got a soft spot for them, right? They're so delicious. You can dip them in cheese and mustard and ketchup and spicy mustard, right? You get to sample the condiments galore. I guess the same could be true for the giant hoagie, but the simple fact is the giant hoagie plays all the time. Hoagies play all the time, but it doesn't seem special. It doesn't seem like I'm at a shindig except for the sheer size of it, right? But I'm still not going to eat more than 6 to 12 inches of said hoagie, so I'm just eating a sandwich at that point. I can have a sandwich every day. The Super Bowl, I want something special. Those cocktail weenies, right? It's like I'm having a fancy hors d'oeuvre at my football shindig. It's a better way to send off the season, if you ask me. So they sit, and the giant hoagie gets the axe.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you could have a sandwich every day. I guess. Yeah, cocktail weenies are certainly a fancy appetizer if you're going to go that route. There is also a halftime show at this Super Bowl. A ton of humongous names. No, it made a lot of people who said they weren't going to watch football pretty pissed off about it, but that's neither here nor there. So our last start one, sit one, cut one is going to be the halftime show performers. We have Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, and Dr. Dre. Start one, sit one, cut one.
I might surprise you with my start, and that is going to be one Kendrick Lamar. K-Dot, for me, has emerged as one of the best MCs in the last 10 plus years. His discography is not nearly as extensive as one Marshall Mathers, but for me, Kendrick Lamar's the albums he has put out stand the test of time, right? I can listen to them start to finish and not get sick of them, and that goes for everyone. Section 80, Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, and Damn. So for me, Kendrick Lamar is my easy start, and I'm going in the order you asked them because my sit is going to be Eminem. Of course, a childhood favorite, right? And I still do turn to some Eminem music even now. But I've just kind of soured on him in later years, and it has kind of lessened his legacy for me a little bit, right? The Slim Shady and Marshall Mathers LPs do stand the test of time. That angry, raw Eminem, there's nothing like it. But now I just I hear that kamikaze or that lame 50-year-old Fidel Castro hat wearing Eminem, and I can't I can't sever ties completely because like Kill You or 3 a.m. are insane. I love that nuts Eminem. That still slaps. I'm still gonna turn to those from time to time, but he's not soaring as high as Kendrick Lamar is right now. So he gets the sit. And then the axe for me is Dr. Dre, which I think is a little unfair because he's more producer than rapper, right? And the albums he has put out, the songs he's featured on, there's undoubtedly some classics. The Chronic is still one of the best rap albums all time. For that alone, Dr. Dre is a worthy inclusion with these other names. And maybe if we were talking production value, he would be the guy. But in terms of rappers, in terms of MCs, Dr. Dre is getting the cut because he just doesn't have the resume that Marshall Mathers does.
Is Eminem top 5 all time?
No, no, he's
Okay.
not.
Okay, fair enough. Damn it, I'm gonna take the same order that you did. I really don't even have too much to add to it. I tend to favor Kendrick Lamar. Every so often when I work out, and yeah, I also work out, I like to listen to Kendrick Lamar. You mentioned Eminem is a childhood favorite, but as time's gone on, yeah, Father Time is unbeaten, and that's prevalent in the rap game as well. So I'll start Kendrick Lamar. I'll sit Eminem. I don't listen to Dr. Dre enough. Another option on here was going to be Snoop Dogg. I would have cut either of them. I just don't personally listen to them enough. I don't really have much to add. You kind of hit the nail on the head.
If we were talking swagger, Snoop might be the nod. That dude is cool as hell, fresh as hell, right? But in terms of lyricism or rap expertise, he just does not cut the mustard with Kendrick Lamar. I think he is once in a generation, has been on top of the game for 10 plus years. Can't wait to see him put something else out. K Dot, if you're tuning in, it's time for some new music. Anyways, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We like the Rams. We like cocktail weenies. We like football.
We like football.